Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I wanted to ask first of all for a quick introduction.
Okay. My name is Edward Barnes, and I'm a composer. I'm also a lyricist and librettist, and I write mostly work for theater and opera. So that's my thing, and I've been doing this for many years now, and have had productions all over the United States, in Europe, and in Asia, all that kind of thing. So that's basically my background. I've done film work and some radio work and videos and things like that, but mostly Broadway, play music to plays and operas.
Amazing. We've never had a opera composer before. I've mostly just
Ah,
interviewed like classical contemporary instrumental composers, so this will be super interesting.
oh,
So
good.
first of all, I wanted to ask, I saw that you had a series where you wrote operas for children, which I thought was
Mhm.
really interesting. So tell me a little bit about that and, how you approach integrating different genres, musical genres, into those operas for kids.
I should point out that the shows you say operas for kids, it's for an audience of children, but they're performed by adults.
I
And they
see.
were all commissioned by professional opera companies like Los Angeles Opera or Houston Opera, Boston
Yeah.
Opera for touring programs that they had where they would go out either to a town and perform in a big auditorium or to a school. And so I had to learn how to write music that would tell a good story and also communicate to children. And children are a great audience, partly because um, they're not critical listeners. They accept whatever kind of music you write for them. And if you're good, you can keep their attention. And that's the main thing, is try to kind of keep their attention. So most of them are very short. They're only like 30 minutes long. They're
Mm.
not full length operas. But they've been done, gosh, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. So they've all been very successful that way. But I really enjoy them. I really enjoy them.
And yeah, I mean, just a comment about those kids not being judgmental. That's something we should all learn from, I think.
Yes,
And
yes.
um, how did you get the idea to start doing that program?
I was in residence at LA Opera as the composer in residence, and they commissioned me for all kinds of different pieces there, and one of them was for a program they had where they toured public schools. And so I wrote a piece for that, and that's how I got started. And then that got picked up by other opera companies, and pretty soon more and more. And then there were other commissions for other operas and that sort of thing. But what I try to do is come with that is they're very accessible. They have very contemporary feelings about them, and will use all contemporary music techniques. But they might also have a plain old G major chord in there with no problem, and they might have some jazz and some blues and some rock and roll and some hip hop all put into the opera. So I mix it all together.
Amazing. And, that's just great because speaking of accessibility, my entire project is really to get children, or not exactly children because I'm not a child, but kids my age to, get into contemporary music. And so I was wondering, like, do you have any tips for young musicians to start getting into this genre?
For young musicians, do you mean like instrumentalists or singers, or what kind
Yeah,
of?
all musicians. I mean, in pre-college, I've met so many different musicians, from instrumentalists to singers, opera singers, uh, and this not problem, but unfamiliarity, sorry, with contemporary music seems to be a general kind of um issue amongst the musicians of
Right.
all trades.
Well, I think, in the children's opera world, a lot of musicians and singers get into it because they're working for professional companies who are doing these projects, or they do them at schools. A lot of my pieces are done by universities who have big programs in opera or musical theater, and they're done as part of that. And so if you were, for instance, a violin player or something like that, you might be brought in to play a score that I wrote. And it would be brand new for you. The good thing is that with my pieces, there are recordings and videos. You can see what other people have done with it and refer to those. It's not, they're not brand new, like, no one's ever done it before or anything like that. But that's how most people get into it. And then some people make a profession of it and work sort of more in education, music education, and they're used that way too. So it's possible all different ways, but it's really, really good experience. It's how I learned to perform, because when I first wrote them, I was the conductor and I was also a narrator in one. So I was an actor
Oh,
and a performer. And we would do 2 or 3 performances per day for months.
wow.
So you really learn how to perform. And it was really good for me because I learned what makes a good performance, what people respond to,
Mhm.
uh, what makes the music trigger a good response, what makes someone laugh, what makes somebody feel sad. And you learn how to do that. So it's really
Amazing.
good experience. Yeah,
I know it sounds like the best experience ever. I mean, even though like that's a very tough schedule.
it
And
is. It's very hard.
and you've had so much success with all of your works, and a lot of I have a lot of composer friends too, and they seem to say something that's really hard for them is to be artistically compelling, but also have reach a wide audience. How do
Mhm.
you manage to combine both in your work?
It's hard to try to be artistically compelling. By that, I mean you just have to do what you feel is really good, and hopefully that is compelling to other people. But I don't go in trying to make a big statement. I do what I feel is best, and
Mhm.
hopefully others feel like that is compelling to them. So I don't try to do that. In terms of an audience, uh, a composer teacher of mine once said to me that I should always write music that I want to listen to. What is the
Mhm.
music I want to hear? And write that, because I am my own best audience. So if you want to reach for a wide audience, you have to first satisfy yourself,
Mhm.
and then see. A lot of times too, when you get a commission, you're working. It's a job, and you have your job is to you know make that production a success,
Mhm.
and that means more people want to come, more they get more bookings, you have more performances. So you have to think about those things, so you have to pay attention. I learned a lot from other opera composers and from Broadway composers on sort of how do you entertain people that way,
Mm.
and that's what I did.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've never heard the two words contemporary music and entertain together. I know
uh,
it's weird, but I think also from my experiences, a lot of kids tend to shy away from contemporary music, particularly because first of all, it's atonality. I mean, some
mhm.
composers um have a lot of atonality in their music, contemporary techniques, and I feel like students who are so ingrained in learning Mozart, Beethoven, Bach cannot bring themselves to, be familiar and really approach those works with the same creativity that they would for classical pieces. So, my question
Why do you think that is, though?
I think it's just this stigma. I mean, a lot, you know, sometimes you grew up and we would play a contemporary piece and teachers would be like, "Oh, that sounds really like that doesn't sound good. That chord sounds very it's too atonal, it's too much, too grotesque in some cases." And I personally had an experience where I performed a commission piece for a competition and I really ended up enjoying it. And I think I also held that kind of bias, but through
Mhm.
that experience I overcame that stigma and I grew to really love contemporary music, and now I listen to it on the daily, but I know that a lot of other students still haven't gotten past that stage
Hmm.
of artistic development. And yeah, so yeah, my question would be um, how do what are your thoughts on this, and how do you suggest um, you know, yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
I think a lot of it has to do with comfort and familiarity with different kinds of music. And if I were a young musician today, I would be learning all kinds of music. I would learn Bach and Beethoven and Mozart and Brahms, and I would also learn, music by blues people, by jazz people, by rock people. I would not rule anything out because great music is great music. It has nothing to do with the style. And if you learn it all, you'll be comfortable with all of it.
Mm,
And Schoenberg or Berg or any atonality like that, Milton Babbitt, those kind of people, it's just a matter of getting familiar with the language of it. And I
mm,
think that's why a lot of people shy away. It'd be like if you grew up learning English and then you moved to India and you couldn't speak Hindu, it
mhm.
would feel you would be scared. And
Yeah,
that's the way I think a lot of musicians approach different kinds of music. It's scary for them a little bit.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like one of the core motivations for my project. And yeah, and so, I always ask composers, because you're a professional in the field. Um, do you know of any resources that right at the moment that, students could go to kind of read about specific websites, or any works, composers, pieces that, they can listen to get into, like, what made you become a composer? Let's say.
Well, those are two different questions, but let
Yeah.
me answer. I'll answer the first one. For resources, there are resources. There are groups like New Music USA that has websites and they interview the composers. They have sort of shows on their websites. They have lots of information. Um, and they help put on concerts all around. They give out grants, that kind of thing. There are lots of those. The music licensing organizations like ASCAP and BMI have programs and resources as well. You can look at
Mhm.
that. Those
Yes.
are all very good. And the thing is now, composers all have websites. Composers have videos. You can listen to their music. You can meet them online. You can do all kind of things that are really make it much, much easier.
Mm.
I've never seen anybody try to assemble all of that into one place.
Mm.
It tends to be about what genre of music. There are websites where you can learn new jazz music. There are websites where you can learn new rock music, new
Mm.
classical music, whatever it is. But there's not one site that sort of has all of that into one. Um, but I don't know what made me want to be a composer. I just started writing when I was young. I was also a pianist,
Mm.
but I got better at writing than I was as a piano player, and so I just got into it, and I liked all kind of different kinds of music. But when I first started writing, I wrote atonal music because that's the way they taught you. I went to Juilliard, and all the teachers there taught atonal music, and that's what you learned how to do. But when I got out of school and needed a job, one of the first jobs I had was to write music to Shakespeare's Macbeth
Oh.
on Broadway, and they did not want atonal music. They
No.
wanted something that sounded like very old Scottish music, and so I had to learn how to do that. And
Mm.
at the same time, I got a job conducting in an off Broadway company, and they did rock and roll shows. So
Oh.
I had to learn how to play it. So you learn from doing. That's how I did it. And then eventually, as a person and as an artist, you just incorporate all that into who you are, and you start writing those sounds too.
Mm. Well, yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and it sounds like you've had, I mean, a crazy experience, like, with all these, like, solutions that you've had, and I really respect that you were willing to, like, kind of, go out of your comfort
Oh,
zone.
I loved it. I loved it. It was all fun. Very, very fun. Love it. I still love that stuff. I like a project where it's something I've not done before. Like it's
Uh,
it's it's some crazy script or whatever it is. Just
mm.
the more different it is, the more better. It's more fun for me.
Mm, that's great inspiration. And now I want to kind of shift to technology and music
Okay.
because uh my project Clexico, and I didn't start off as, focusing on technology, but the more I listened to contemporary music, the more I realized that technology was kind of you had to have an understanding of technology in a musical context to listen to these new pieces because a lot of them
Hmm.
incorporate electronical work. And so
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you, like, what is have you like experimented with technology in your work? What
Oh yeah. I've done a lot with using technology to create music, using technology to integrate with a performance, with sound, with playback of sound, where performers play against them. I did a whole project that was one woman, and we recorded her voice on about 24 different tracks. She was her own orchestra. And then when she went to perform the piece, she performed against herself singing in columns of speakers.
I love
So I love that. I think anybody who's around today should embrace all that stuff. And I
that.
use every app I can get, and I try, and I think it's really good. I think it's very, very interesting. You
Yeah,
shouldn't be boxed in by, a Mozart orchestra. That's just
yeah,
one way to do it.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's amazing. I mean, I really liked the story of, the woman having all the different her own orchestra, like
Yeah.
the whole show. I love that. And how did you start using technology in your work first? What
Well,
introduced you?
my sister
Mm,
went to film school at NYU, and when she got out, she needed a job, so she started working on um, films that integrated were interactive. So you went online and you worked with them that way. And so she got me into different apps for Apple Macintosh computers.
mm,
And one of the first things I did was music notation apps, and then sequencer apps so that I could play into a sequencer and have it play back for me. And then these things just developed from there, because then you start thinking, well, if I can put it on a sequencer and I can play it back, maybe I can play it back in a performance and only use certain tracks and like you do all different sort of things. So it's just they're like paints. If you're an artist, you use different colors. The technology is just like that.
mm. I see. And how do you see technology, I mean, obviously it's evolving so quickly. How do you see technology impacting the composition process right now and in the future?
Um, That's a good question. My one concern with what's going on now is AI.
Mm.
And the reason I'm concerned is I believe that what people are going to start to do is manipulate artificial intelligence to create for them rather than creating themselves. So I'm hoping that people begin to figure out ways to use AI that is actually creative in a human way
Mm.
rather than just, having the AI create something and you edit it. It's a
Yeah,
big difference there.
for sure.
But I think it could be very exciting, but it just depends. And it's going very, very quickly, faster than people are able to rethink it.
Mm,
So it's tricky that way.
absolutely.
I would love to hear somebody who used AI to create a really cool piece
Mm,
and see what it sounded like, but I
mm,
haven't heard it yet. But that's where I think it's going. I think people are going to start to create their own soundtracks so
mm,
that you have your own personal soundtrack that you can create through AI. So the role of composer may change, you
mhm.
know? Don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah.
yeah. I think I was talking with one of my composer friends the other day, and they said that they c- um they had the idea that AI is it kind of bases its knowledge on what's inputted, not so it doesn't create it. It kind of rearranges based on prior knowledge.
Right.
So it can never be truly creative. And I think I agree with that. And I think what you said just now is very similar to that. And yeah, there's, I think, a lot of artists, not just musicians, are really concerned with AI, the rise of AI. And, you know, but I do know that some composers are integrating it into their works. And I was wondering
Uh,
if you knew, like, just from a composer's perspective, how do you think, could one compose with AI without compromising their, artistic license?
I think you have to learn to think in a different way. That's what my answer would be. In other words, if you're going to use AI, you're going to use it probably to generate some things.
Mm,
So you might be able to go in and say, I want this chord progression, but I want it done in a bossa nova style. And it would probably do it for you rather than you have to know what bossa nova is and create it yourself. Then the trick would be, how do you use that? Let's say you get it to do it. Can you be creative about what is created that way?
mm.
I don't know. I have a songwriting student right now, and she is using AI to help her create the lyrics to her songs.
Oh, wow.
What she does is use the AI to create the first draft. She tells the AI, write a song about with all these things, and it creates it. But then she takes it and edits it. She changes the lyrics and does whatever she
Mhm.
wants to. But instead of her sitting down and hammering out the first draft, she's using the AI to do that.
Mm,
So it speeds it up. I can't tell yet if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
mm.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, so many
But
different like pros and cons to it, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
they really are.
Yeah. Well, that was all the questions I had. And one last question um would be, obviously I'm just starting this project from scratch.
Yeah.
Um so I was wondering like if you had any advice for um like someone trying to start a project like this, what kind of content do you think is would be beneficial to the musical world right now?
I think something new that hasn't been done, like I think something with AI where you're trying to grapple with that a little bit so that AI could be used as a resource. It could scan the internet and find things about composers and music that exists and how AI could be used creatively too. There's no one right now that I've seen in music that's doing anything with that.
Mm,
So if that's an angle that would work for you, I think that could be really interesting and could
mm,
get a lot of attention too.
mm,
And then I would think, you'll have to think about you're an instrumentalist, so you have to think about what does it mean for you as a player,
mm,
um, and how could you use it somehow, with your work? Would it help you practice, or would it help you learn a score? Would it play along with you?
mm,
I don't know.
mm. Those are
It
super.
might it might put like a piano accompanist out of business because you could probably have AI play it for you.
Oh, maybe. I know like some people are like developing apps like that. Like now,
Yeah,
even when I was young, I had a thing called the Achel, where you would put like a cassette into it and you would play it and it would play the soundtrack of your like piece, like the Vivaldi concerto, and then it would play the backing track and you would just play along to it. And
that's right. That's right.
yeah,
Well,
I
they
mean,
have it now where you can change. It'll follow your tempo and it'll do
ah,
whatever you want to
yeah.
do. You can lead it. You can do whatever you want. It's very fun that way. I was invited to there's like a contemporary chamber group in New York City that had a big gala dinner thing, and as the entertainment, they had a string quartet play, and the string quartet was on iPads, and
Mm,
then there was an iPad for the guest. And what you could do was you could pull different cells of music up and spin it around and reorganize the piece of music, and the string quartet would get the information and play it right back to you. So it was very
wow.
live. It was very interesting that way. And they were trying to use technology in a way so that the audience could create the piece.
Mm, yeah, that's amazing. That's super interactive. And
Yeah.
wow, what was it called?
I don't know if there was a name of the piece. There was a composer who had created what they were calling cells. So there were little bits of music,
Hmm.
and you could reorganize them. There was probably, 15 or 20 little bits, and you could flip it from a violin to a cello. You could flip the order, and it kept going by like this for the players.
Mm.
Really, really interesting though.
Interesting.
It was
Yeah,
just
well,
kind of like an experiment just to see, what you could do.
yeah. Yeah, I think in that way, like, that can really attract mass audiences if it like classical music can be interactive like that. Like, I hear so many people around me also saying like classical music is like kind of dying, but I
Mm,
think it's on it. I mean, personally, I don't think it is, but
no,
I mean,
no.
one way to kind of get more, especially the younger generation involved, like, is maybe to do one of those interactive concerts.
Especially for people that don't know a lot about music, it adds an element of participation that makes it, more fun, and
Yeah.
they can immediately see what happens.
Mm, yeah.
And they're not just sitting there listening.
Mm.
Uh, it was
Maybe,
fun now.
yeah, maybe it can be used as like a learning resource for like
Hmm.
a student. Well,
Oh yeah, that could be a great idea.
wow. So many new ideas. Well,
That's good.
yeah, well, this has been a really thought-provoking, like informative conversation. I need to thank you.
Oh, great. Well, good luck with it. Keep me posted if you get something up, to look at or whatever.
I will,
Let
I
me
will,
know. Let me know for sure.
I will. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you
You're
have.
certainly welcome.
Okay,
Okay, take care.
take care. Bye bye.